Thank you so much for both of your great presentations. My first question to you, Mr. Dzerowicz, is the following. My Conservative colleagues have recently started to indicate that the economic situation in Canada is dire. Our cupboards are bare. We have nothing left to sustain us in any type of a fiscal or emergency crisis that might befall us as we are now undergoing the coronavirus. You recently have put out, I believe, the Fiscal Sustainability Report 2020. Can you kindly describe the state of our current fiscal situation?
The state of the economy first, because that was also the premise of your question. We have noticed that economic growth has slowed sharply in the last quarter of 2019, and we expect growth to be relatively modest in the first quarter, and that was before the oil price decline of recent days and the rail blockade. So we expect growth to be like barely positive in the first quarter of 2020. With respect to the Fiscal Sustainability Report, we have released a report earlier this year that takes a long-term perspective of government finances, provincial and federal. And in that report, we define fiscal sustainability as having the same debt to GDP ratio at the beginning of the period and at the end of the period. So it's granted it's an arbitrary point, but that's the best definition we could come up with in terms of sustainability. And that report shows that in the absence of any changes in policies, the federal government has fiscal sustainability, sustainability issues, so it's financially sustainable, and it has wiggle room to the tune of $41 billion to reduce taxes or increase spending or a combination of both. At the provincial level, it's a totally different story. In aggregate, provinces need to make adjustments of $6 billion, 6.6 if my memory serves me well, with different pictures depending on the provinces and territories. So some provinces are already sustainable through relatively high taxes that are matched with high spending in some cases, but taxes that match spending. Others are in more difficult financial situations for which there will need to be some adjustments over a 75-year horizon. That's important. And assuming status quo policies, which we know won't happen. So that's why we call these projections rather than forecasts, because we know one thing, this is not what will happen. There will be changes before that, for sure.
And I think the reality is you make the best conclusions based on the information that you have right now.
Exactly.
I do note from your report, you said current fiscal policy at the federal level is sustainable over the long term.
Yeah.
I also want to acknowledge that you've indicated we have about $41 million wiggle room, which I think is great. And I think that's very helpful. Billion wiggle room, which is very helpful. That's even better. So I just want to put that out there. I wouldn't say that. I think that the reason you actually have that there is we have been saving for rainy days. I don't think that we want to be spending everything that is within our piggy bank. And I do think that maybe the coronavirus might be one of those things that we might be looking at. So I thank you for that. I want to turn my attention very quickly to Mr. Hayes, because I only have a minute left. Fossil fuel subsidies and their quick and urgent elimination is a top priority for Davenport residents, and that's the riding I'm very honored to represent. How do we get to a solution? Is it a matter of finance and environment sort of getting together and just sort of better defining inefficient and efficient subsidies, or is it that we need some external body to help us out?
Thank you for the question. So I will start by saying that the government has eliminated a number of tax-based measures that we would call fossil fuel subsidies. Our concern moving forward, I would say, would largely be with the non-tax subsidies, with Environment and Climate Change Canada being the lead on that side of it. Our concern was that the analysis that they performed was not based on a strong definition, and they didn't include all of the agencies and departments that should be included in that analysis. So those would be the two starting points for that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate I'm at my 5 minutes. Thank you.
You were out of time.